Yes. So last time we had a good look at what are the threats, what are the physical and logical security, then a kind of prevention, post-incident surveillance, and the other things, right? Now let's peep into actual planning of it, actual how we're going to basically address these issues at a corporate level, right? So let's start. And again, this is a precursor overall. We haven't learned in terms of the tools and techniques. But let's identify how do we plan a cybersecurity. Let's say you need to plan your cybersecurity for yourself, house, your own organization or something like that. How do you go about it? So this is just a thoughts given rather than any specific discipline to. Again, as we discussed, cybersecurity is a really evolving world. So here we get almost a new tool every week, every month, and then there are some popular tools, of course, but still, the new tool might have certain great advantage of technology. So we might need to leverage those things, and that's why we normally try to understand what the new tool contains. So there should be a kind of rather than R&D, it's kind of feasibility testing for these tools. We need to do continuously in case of cybersecurity because all these new tools they come to the market with some unique selling proposition, or they might have some extra what can say vigilance, extra something in terms of the issues they can tackle at actuals than the older tools, because older tools they try to customize themselves to the new threats, to the new challenges, getting or new challenges we are observing day to day, like a new virus, like a new way of hackers approach or something like that sort. So let's spend some time in understanding how would you develop a cybersecurity plan. And we have a hands-on workshop on this as well, where you normally plan a cybersecurity center for a given organization, and then we'll basically build into that. Okay, let's start. First, the most important thing is identify key assets and threats. What are the key assets? Here we are talking about the most critical part on which my organization stands on. Let's say if you're looking for, if you're at Walmart, or if you're at something like a distribution center, or big mall, what are the most critical things there? Of course, the point of sales to start with, the server where they store their finances, and if at all they do store the cash in those areas, right? Otherwise, all these rest of the things are already insured by the manufacturer, because as in these stores goes, these are uh, run by some caretaker kind of company rather than they own the products there. And this is a normal business model. There could be exceptions also. So we need to understand for each of such establishment what actually is a critical assets, or a key assets, and then what could be the key threats. So what could be the key threats, like the shoplifting, like somebody's trying to hack the point of sales, hack the overall financial transaction, the way it's happening at the actual locations and all those things. Okay, so we need to prevent such scenario. For every such establishment, we might have a bit of different approach to address to, and we'll see how in couple of slides. But let's try to understand from a generic perspective. So if you go to school, college, university, their key assets are a bit different than these malls. Similarly, if you go to a governmental office like a state office or a federal office, their key identifier might be a bit different, or their key assets might be a bit different than the others, and so on and so forth. So we need to first understand, jot down, and make sure we mark these critical assets in a good analyzed way, get it reviewed and approved from the business owner, so that we are in line with their thought process, because those are the guys who are actually protecting these assets without any security centers, right? And that's why their say is quite important. Their agreement, or their kind of um, a second opinion or an approval is a kind of give you a clear idea of we are going in the right direction. And that's why we normally go to the help, go to get their help, and we'll try to get it sorted out. And so that at the end of the day, I have a list of key assets and key threats as well, so that I can start protecting these assets on priority and make out a overall, policy procedures to check out these threats periodically as well. The first step of developing cybersecurity plan is to identify the assets you are protecting. So we need to understand what we are protecting on a given day. This step involves active consideration of the business of your business concerns, as well as the assets and risk assessment and the threat management processes as well. So assets and risk management, because there are some assets who are perishable. So even if you have physical security in place, those assets can get degraded, at a constant speed or at a predetermined rate. So for such scenario, we need to understand the risk as well. Is it perishable? Then how can I make sure it will not perish within the time of disposition and all those things, right? So that's how I basically plan my, asset and risk assessment. And then I go and plan the threat management processes as well. Achieve physical security on priority. And this is the important point which most of the cybersecurity experts do forget. So for such scenario, we have to understand how we are planning to make sure we have enough surveillance, or rather I'll say electronic surveillance with the cloud capability, so that even if somebody disturb the surveillance equipment physically, I have a backup taken on the cloud server, which is almost impossible to damage, delete, or remove from that cloud storage. And that's why I normally go for a cloud storage-based surveillance facility nowadays. And these are really getting economical day by day. So there's no much of investment here. And that's why it's normally forgotten by all SOC officials. Integrate periodic audit on a physical security with escalation matrix. Now there are two things here, physical security and escalation matrix. Physical security, I believe you have a good idea as of now, right? Anybody who couldn't understand physical security at this moment? Or do you want me to explain again what is physical security?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. If you have any confusion, please do ask. Don't wait for me asking you the questions. Please stop me and I'll happy to solve your confusion then and there. Okay. And then we have escalation matrix. Again, this is a kind of software engineering approach. They call it escalation matrix. On the ground, it's really a table where, in case of depending upon the level of breach, level of threat, we normally inform certain individuals, certain designated officers within the vicinity, within the given office, so that they can take the corrective actions, or they at least suggest corrective actions to the SOC officials for the next instance. Again, escalation matrix, you can feel it reactive as well, but more or less it's a proactive thing, because here all these individuals which are assigned or which are included in the escalation matrix bears a responsibility of of managing the threat intake in case some threat realizes, in case some risk materializes. And that's why we have this escalation matrix for a given offices, and we follow that to a religious level, so that any challenges is reported with the knowledge archive, with the knowledge archival as well. Nowadays, again, this is a kind of software engineering concept called knowledge archival. What do we do? Whatever we learn on job, every time with a given instance, I archive this knowledge at a repository where, in case similar thing happens, we can refer to this library or archival, so that what was I have done previous time, what I have done this time, which is better. So I'm trying to build a best practices for a given things, and that's how I keep continuously evolving. And this also supports your CMMI, UI type of improvement levels, one step at a time. And that's why even as an SOC center, all type of these quality processes do apply to this department, do apply to this office as well. And we need to understand that from a perspective of a typical cybersecurity analyst, auditor, or a manager, or any of these roles. So here, what we are trying to do, we are trying to achieve the basic level of cybersecurity for a given entity in a step-by-step mode, right? Let's take a step further. We'll try to understand how to prioritize assets, risks, and threats. Here we are just identified in my first, paragraph or first go. After all these things, whenever you have these sanctions that approved by the business owner, you normally go and try to prioritize them in terms of their values, criticality to the business, and there are various other things as well. There are quite a few good templates available on the net free of cost. But instead of that, what I would really love to understand from you as in person, because we are artists, we do have a kind of really brilliant mind on our shoulder. So we need to plan it ourselves, and then we can compare with the best practices, or then we can basically try to understand of these free templates available on the net. Okay. So first of all, we need to prioritize these assets, risk, and threats. If you look at the Project Management Institute way, even every project management, they include now these SOC prioritization, asset prioritization, risk prioritization, and threats prioritization. So even all the management institutes globally, they have included cybersecurity as an integral operations for a given project, for a given venture, or for a given business, and that's how this is generalized nowadays. Again, the most important thing here are the tools and techniques which we use, which are really evolving day by day. So we need to understand which are the best for a given business. So what we do, we normally look at some knowledge of similar business, or we normally analyze similar businesses for tools they are following, for the tools they are utilizing. And then we can try them, or we can basically go to the market and have a team of research where we normally analyze which tools or which techniques basically suits us for a given business. After assessing your asset, threats, and risks, the next step is to prioritize them with the right approach depending upon the context of your organization. So as we discussed, if you are basically targeting the SOC operations or a security plan for a given mall, for a given university, school, colleges, governmental organizations, or any business for that matter, the approach can be a bit different, because criticality of the assets, the risk and threats are different for different organizations. There could be a similarity, but the diversity is much more than the similarities here. And that's what we need to understand. Here are the questions we need to answer to help us identify top risk. What are the risks or threats in your organization? You might come up with a list of 10, 15 risks, depending upon your knowledge of risk or threats for given your given business. What are the main concerns of your organizations regarding cybersecurity? So where does actually challenge lies in terms of or why we are going to implement cybersecurity? What fear kicked out this initiative in your organization? Or what type of concerns have given you a thought of implementing security measures for a given business? Then the last one, not the least, but yes, which risk and threats would harm your organizations more? And this can be anything from a typical virus spread like corona, or tornado, rains, and whatnot. And it's again depends on the regional characteristics, depends on your business characteristics, depends on your overall. How do you approach your, how do you do your day-to-day business as well? Because in day-to-day business, it depends on the environmental things on a quite larger scale. If you look at a mall, we normally, serve the customers, right? So whatever can challenge any, in terms of getting new customers can be a risk or threat, and so on and so forth. So in this way, we can start understanding which risk and threats would harm organization on the ground. We can then go and determine the countermeasures, treatments for each risk and threats identified, classify them from easy wins to the hardest to achieve. Yes. And this phenomenon is normally labeled as a risk register in a normal day-to-day business. Risk register is a kind of typical Excel sheet. Why I'm telling Excel sheet? Because Excel is the maximum used spreadsheet software. But if you believe you are going to use OpenOffice like Libre, OpenOffice, and any of those softwares, you can imagine any of these spreadsheets where I normally maintain a list of risk, their weightage, their assessment in the last review, their mitigation strategy, mitigation cost, mitigation durations, and difficulty in mitigation from 1 to 10 kind of scenarios. So this risk register normally have all the risk and threats as well. Why threats? Because every threat is a risk. And every threat, even if it's materialized, even if it's you are currently experiencing, still it can be a forthcoming risk. It can be a risk which can be what you can say address which some better wear and care or lesser cost or efficiently. And that's how we keep improving ourselves with this risk register. I don't know why I've not included that thing as a risk register here, but yes, risk register is an output from this second activity. From the first activity, we have a list of key assets and the threats. And you can also start building risk register from the first item itself. But in the second, we normally prioritize them. We normally assess them on the ground level and also have a discussions with the business owners or the risk management facility available in a given business. Many of the business, like the cyber security office, we have risk management office as well, where they normally manage all such kind of risk in terms of addressing the risk at a ground level. It can be something like accepting a challenging customer or addressing a challenging customer to addressing this environment, addressing this threat like COVID. And they basically guide on building the operational changes to the office or the environment of the office day by day. And these are now quite active in quite a few offices in North American region. And that's why we are basically quite geared up for all the environmental as well as health hazards nowadays, because we have SOC. If you don't have a separate risk, office, that office also can be a part of the security center offices as well. Does that make sense? Anybody have any confusion in understanding how to develop this security plan? Yeah, good, right? Okay. Let me take you further. And I think we have around 5 or 6 such, basic entities, how we concentrate our develop security plan. Again, this is really important from interview perspectives, because interviewers normally like to ask, how do you will build a security plan for a given office? And he might take a, example of a Walmart, example of a, DMV office, example of a, airport or something like that. Sorry. Well, airport are far and few, but yes, DMV office and, Walmart, Circuit City, these kind of examples are quite common. So we need to understand, we need to analyze in a way how me as an individual will plan this cybersecurity plan. You have these points, and whenever you get time, might be today, tomorrow, please try to jot down or try to stress yourself with the thought process of how do I create a cybersecurity plan for a given office. Just try a thought and jot down some points how we address those things. Okay, let's move on to the third point: set and achievable goals. Now, what an individual normally do who are inexperienced in cybersecurity, they just try to create the goals, but they forget to assign a kind of schedule to the goal. And this is one of the most crucial missing things with the freshers in cybersecurity. So whenever you set up a goal, try to attach a schedule to it, and we'll see in in this content how we're going to do that. Okay, but yes, the goals without a schedule is just a thought. With the schedule, you basically start planning the goal on the ground, and that's how you build a plan. Plan is basically goals with the schedule with this risk register mitigation strategy. Okay, let's try to understand from this presentation perspectives. It's cool to aim high goals, but achievable goals are more important to a company than a long list of policies and procedures that don't help. So just having a list of policy and procedure doesn't help. We need to understand which is my first priority, which is my second, and how sooner or later I need to set up these policies and procedure in the motion actually on the ground. While cybersecurity plan should identify all the activities that you would like to undertake, you need to identify those goals that are truly achievable. So I can, bar my mall with walls across the building, because normally these malls, as we have seen in North America or Canadian region, these malls are a huge building, and they are normally situated on a ground like a playground or open ground. On we don't normally build walls around it, because there are challenges in terms of that might look like an obstructions to some of the customers. For that way, we normally have a kind of open space where anybody can park with a basic, parking denotation or basic marks on the parking area, and that's all what we do. And this is how we try to basically address the security concern in a step-by-step way, right? And we need to decide on the ground which security policies are more critical than others. And this way, I'll start planning my security in a step-by-step way. Some companies at the beginning of the year set a goals for completing tasks in 6 months, but they never complete it in over a year. And this is also detrimental to the security policy. Unless you want to achieve the goal, please don't set the goal. And you can clearly, even in a risk register, you can mark a dismissed risk. What do you mean by dismissed risk? Because whenever I have a risk review meeting, many of us have believed that this risk, we noted it, but I don't think that's getting materialized in the near future. And this is something like a heavy rains in the season of summer. So I can skip that risk, or I can demerit that risk till my some actual rainy season start, and so on and so forth, right? So this way, I'm planning the goals to an achievable category, where I have 5-6 important goals to be addressed in a month's time, in a quarter time, and so on and so forth. Start with the basics. The goals are easily achievable. Remember, cybersecurity policies are strong foundation that will drive us the cybersecurity efforts. So whenever you start, we need to start on a low-hanging fruit, or the cybersecurities which are prioritized or critical in nature, which we can achieve in the first month or first 2 months at least, so that we can show the results to the top management as well. Focus on the most important high-risk areas first and get them out of the way. Means get them sorted out, include them in your cyber threat matrix, and try to understand the escalation try to apply the escalation matrix with the schedule to these cyber threats. And high priority items, even business can support you on those, because they can also concur with you on, yes, we need to sort this on our level. So for the physical security, you might suggest them 6 to 12 surveillance camera at the gate, at the corner, at the back, the ramp of facility, and all those things, where you might have motion sensor based security camera which is monitored 24/7 with a cloud storage and all those things. So these basically a kind of reactive measures already set up for any theft or breakages could happen to my office. I'm just sharing an example which came to my mind. You could supply with many great examples as well. Okay. Have you understood what you mean by achievable goals rather than just building the goals list and those scenario? Why schedule is important? Any questions so far on achievable goals?
No, I think I'm good.
You're good, right? Okay. Let me take it further. Then we have document on cybersecurity policy. Yes, documentation is a need, because we're going to rely on this documentation to guide us throughout our procedure. In case there's some new cybersecurity officials joining your team, you might like to supply them with this documentation so that they can understand your procedures and approach from start, and they will basically try to help you out or try to gain the knowledge of your cybersecurity instance than whatever he or she have experience from. And then he or she can contribute more effectively. It's known fact that small businesses often operate more by word of mouth than intuitional knowledge than operating out of the books. Yes, and this is a challenge with majority of startups. Whenever you are a startup company, you tend to believe on whatever once said, and if it's at all achieved or forgotten or something like that. So there are quite a few good number of gray areas there. How do you solve this gray area? Try to build some documentation. As we discussed, we can create a simple Excel sheet where we have a number of risks, number of threats, and the impact, cost, and everything attached to them in a with a clear thought in this what you can say risk register or a threat register, where we have a policies and procedure including them to address, let's say have a risk audit once in a week. So on every Friday at 3 p.m., we'll have a quick risk audit where we'll try to understand if there are any new risks. This can be anything from 30 minutes to an hour meeting, where we include all the critical officials who are interested in supporting these initiatives, like security operations or addressing threats or risk, or any department which the risk can be imposed upon, and so on and so forth. So we can have all such meetings where we review our risk register proactively, and we also try to understand how much could be the damage in case of any risk materializes, and this we can call the threat assessment. With the cost involved, with the schedule involved, you can implement such process effectively, intelligently for a given company. Cybersecurity is one area where it's essential document to your protocol, processes, policies, and every procedure. So even an employee entering from the back door has to swipe his card. This is as simple as attendance procedure, as well as the physical security which is maintained for a given offers. Having cybersecurity plan avails you the opportunity to have detailed toolkit that is in line with the cybersecurity best practices and policies. And of course, these are always reviewed and updated as per the given business, as per their own risk review, meeting schedule, or the procedure and policies implemented. This can be something like a weekly meeting, which we have just discussed, or they can have bi-weekly meeting, or they can have once in a month kind of meeting. Again, depending upon criticality and the interest of top management to address this risk criticality on a priority, or with the need of the process or need of the governmental regulation kind of scenarios. Yes, now there are state laws as well as federal law to make you set up an associate center for a given organization as well. So all these, even DMD offices, all these, malls, they have their own security offices. They have their own policies where normally governmental organizations can do a, surprise audit for checking on these policies, and they normally have these compliance licenses given to them accordingly. Of course, for software, we have to follow more religiously because software is an intangible asset. So yeah, let me take a minute to explain you what we mean by intangible and tangible assets. Okay, does anybody know about these intangible and tangible assets? Have you heard of these terminologies? Anyone? No. Okay. Let me first start with a layman's term. Intangible is basically which you can't touch or physically see, like software, like goodwill, like brand value. And then tangible assets are like physical, like wall, door, camera, parking slot, and the damage is actually done to these ones. So intangible assets also has a value attached to it. So brand value of Walmart is much more than a brand value of your local, what they call super mall, but it's actually a shop. Like 7-Eleven, they have very smaller shops, right? At the gas station or something like that. But if you look at Walmart, their overall establishment cost is quite higher, even their maintenance cost is quite higher. So all these, even risk management is in line with the cost and criticality of the target as well. Having said that, even logical or intangible and tangible assets have their own value noted in the books, or we normally take a value from an assessment agency and basically mention it in it a risk register. So what if I'm thinking of a brand value or brand value of, let's say, Walmart, and some thieves break out your outer sentry or wall near your storage in a night, and the press give a full coverage to that. What does this mean? This means that to a customer, you are purchasing something at an unsecured storage or unsecured shop or unsecured mall. And for that matter, many customers might not turn up because they feel like, okay, this establishment is good, but still it's not that secure enough. So what these guys try to do, they try to hush this, kind of untoward incidents, and they normally try to put up some really good surveillance and have all those, alarms in place in case somebody tries to bang on their, car on the wall, and these alarms start basically shouting left and right to make sure there are somebody who's trying to make a physical damage. And this way, I can really mitigate the threat of having physically damaged offices or physically damaged, um, wall of any kind. And that's why we use a great amount of technologies for such scenarios also. So there are some pressure switch, there are some, motion sensor camera, which normally monitors each and every motions even throughout the night with that all those night vision and everything. Okay, now having cybersecurity plan avails you the opportunity to have a detailed toolkit that is lined with the cybersecurity best practices and policies. Writing this policy may be an Herculean task. This might take a couple of months. However, some organizations are best known for their expertise and technical business writing. You can hire such services of this organization as well, or basically we can acquire such tools which also basically have a good consultancy value. Or there are, if you can see in local newspapers, there are some advertisement of needing a cybersecurity expert to build cybersecurity policy or SOC center plan and all those things. And these are paid on hourly basis nowadays. So you can avail such facility as well, or you can apply for such facilities as well. Once you start understanding the threats and the risk we normally incur for a given business. Okay, and this way we can start learning. We can start learning on the job as well. Okay, any questions so far on how do you start documenting cybersecurity policy?
I'm good.
Oh, I'm good.
Okay, no problem. Am I going fast or the pace is okay with you?
It's good with me.
Right? Okay.
Yes,
Please,
all right.
yeah, please do stop me if I'm going fast. I'm born and brought up in a city called Mumbai. It's like New York. We do tend to speak fast. And that's a kind of manufacturing defect, you can say, or a risk we have. No problem. Please do stop me if you have any confusion then and there. Don't wait for me to, ask you such question. Okay. Link goals to business objective. Yes. At the end of the day, why we start business? To incur, to gain some profits. Now, whatever the business goals are, need to be guarded even via cybersecurity plan or security officers as well. Okay. So identify business reason for each goal, and as earlier highlighted, for example, it's better to indicate that a firewall is needed, not just for the sake of it, but so the staff can easily access the data. They need to do their jobs. Don't ignore the business side of cybersecurity plan, because every plan will have an impact on your organizations. And this case was a really good case study available on the net. I think, yes, a Circuit City employee in one of the most Midwestern city have hacked their server and tried to modify his attendance data. And basically wipe out all the days he was absent or he was taken leave. And he did it so intelligently with the help of his cousin or his niece or something like that, where he have done it successfully. And then this, whenever they have audited the attendance data, they find some discrepancy of this guy's particular record. So they call him and understand this understanding. So then basically he tried to deny it at the first, But then when they check actually the records of their digital record, updation, they found that somebody have reactively updated the attendance. And that's how the whole, getting my attendance in line kind of threats have been addressed. And this has happened because they never have a firewall on their Wi-Fi routers in between the overall attendance system, so that even a mobile who know basic knowledge of computer or who have a good knowledge of how to hack a server have updated their actual database level records by updating these attendance. And that's why this was in, I think, late 1960s, not 16, sorry, 2016, where this Circuit City, officials have then migrated each and every of Circuit City, outlet with a firewall and stop giving access to the customer of their internal networks. And that's how they basically strengthen their security. And these are basically, we are trying to understand, whenever you have a business, whenever you are running a business and you have some digital assets, you need to secure them first. And these digital asset security means access to the login, password change, and all those things as well. And you should always have a kind of at least single to two level security for a given employee, for a given office within those premises. Okay, and this way we are improving day by day. Overall, the industry is also improving day by day. Circuit City is normally an electronic store. So I think those guys are much more enabled than the Walmarts of the world, the Aldis of the world, 7-Elevens of the world. Okay, so this way, these are basically even implemented by the federal law. Nowadays, there was a hack of a hack of a local API office through a 7-Eleven Wi-Fi. In previous good old years, this was I think 2014 or 15, where all 7-Elevens have started giving free Wi-Fi, where you can just fill in your gas and get your WhatsApp messages or check your emails while sitting in the parking lot to make sure you can use this free Wi-Fi at a given 7-Eleven store. And many 7-Eleven stores have started that. But then there was a federal law implemented in, I think, Clinton's administrations, where they made it, you have to have at least one level of WEP security. We'll learn about that in a few slides, to be enabled or implemented for each such free Wi-Fi as well. So what they do, whenever you want to join this free Wi-Fi, they try to get your phone number and the actual name, and which they can verify with the records with the states, and then they can give you access. So that whatever Wi-Fi you want to access, depending upon your phone number, you can access. If it's a laptop, then you give them your email address and the name. And these pair creates the basic WEP security for giving access to a firewall for a given business. And that's how we keep modifying or adjusting to the actual threats and risk at the given point for a given premises, for a given offices, for a given business. Then again, there's a periodic need of checking such vulnerabilities. Now, these vulnerabilities have found like breakage of an API via 7-Eleven, or breakage of that attendance management system at a Circuit City outlet. Now, these are the example of vulnerability which are found by reactive nature. Now, as in cybersecurity expert, as a SOC officials, we need to check for such vulnerabilities proactively. Let me try to explain from this presentation. Having done all these 5 measures, we have to basically do a test run and understand if we are left with any vulnerabilities open. We need to find out if our cybersecurity plan works or not. Even if it works for 90% of the things, we need to keep try and find out the other 10% of vulnerabilities. Why I'm saying 90%? Because you might miss some. And this is a normal scenario. As in human, we do evolve over time. So for the first couple of years, at least we need to have a physical review audit of these threat assessments. And that's what we do whenever we plan for the basic cybersecurity plan for a startup or a new organization. Therefore, test your plan on how do you do this at least once in a year. Well, once in a year is quite a long time. I'll say once in a week, or if not once in a month. Hire a cybersecurity expert to perform full assessment on your security to make sure your plan is still relevant, up to date and effective. Some organizations even hire ethical hackers, but that's going too far to attempt to breach their system. Cyber threats are always evolving, so your computer security plan should also evolve. Now, there's a good case study of Netflix. You know Netflix, right? A streaming movie site via internet, and it's a kind of what you can say platform on cloud. Here, what we do, we normally can view various movies, various sitcoms. They get released for this platform as well. One of the favorite is basically House of Cards, and I really like that sitcom. It has good number of seasons and good number of episodes to that. But yes, so like these, they have given an initiative. This was in 2019, pre-COVID era, where or rather 2018, I believe. Pardon me for my here example on this. They've floated an ad in their website saying if you could hack our server, we'll pay you $1 million. And this way, they tried to basically, rather than hiring an ethical hackers, they challenged all these, cyber hackers, ethical or unethical hacker, on a blunt, challenge saying, please hack our Netflix, please prove it, and we'll give you $1 million. $1 million or 500K, I couldn't remember the exact number, but yes, it was really good number, which can be amounted to, around 5 years salary or something like that. So yeah, so in that kind of scenario, they tried it and they awarded 3 people, one Russian, one, I think, one from Europe and one American. So they have awarded these 500K or some amount to these hackers as well because they successfully hacked. And then these guys, they have patched up their system for such security vulnerabilities. So rather than employing cybersecurity experts, many guys do these things also. And we're going to learn about the ethical hacker and unethical hackers as well. Okay, but step by step. Let me try to revise what we learned as of now. A cybersecurity plan specifies the security policy, procedure, and control required to protect an organization's against threats and risk. A cybersecurity plan can also outline the specific steps to respond to such breach. So what we are trying to do here, to have a cybersecurity office within your organizations to understand how we are solving the business problem in terms of any security challenges, threat, and build a policy, procedure, and controls which will make sure we'll never have a security breach, and try to also build policies and procedure to respond in case such breach happens. And this is common for risk, vulnerabilities, or threats as well. Okay, so that's the conclusion of overall what you include in a cybersecurity plan. Does anybody have any questions on these?
Yes, I would like to know. During this cybersecurity plan, whatever the goals they're creating, are there any kind of like a format or what are like I know understand the basic goals like protect this asset, protect this asset by this way, but what kind of do they develop any kind of software which can designate the particular asset? And also, once they determine those goals, when they do the test run, how they do the test run? Like, just run the software, or they're trying to, put some bug or malware to detect the threats and those kind of things. How they do perform this entire plan?
This is a really great question. Let me start to answer part by part. First of all, how do we create such plan? This plan is normally, as we discussed, normally in an Excel sheet where we have all the risk, threats, and vulnerability listed. And after that, we normally risk the impact assessment. What is the probability of impact of such a risk, threats, or assessment? Okay. If you search for a risk register on a Google, you can get a typical format. Because at the end of the day, to a layman, these are all risks, right? We are trying to mitigate. A risk register, or what we call normally cybersecurity plan, is basically a document where we normally have an impact assessment done periodically, mostly once in a week. If you are a startup, or if you are still not, completed building your policy procedures and controls, otherwise at least once a month, where we normally revisit all these threats, risk, and challenges of security, and try to understand if there's any increase in impact, if there's any increase in the threats level, if there's an increase in the even cost of mitigating such risk. Now, what do you mean by cost of mitigation? Let's say a thief, penetrate your wall with his truck or whatnot, right? And that way, to release this news to a press can be detrimental to your brand value. So what you do, you need to, give some money to these press guys not to publish such challenges. Well, of course, you need to lodge a police complaint and police will take the photos and everything. That's fine. But that's a kind of a federal compliance or a state compliance. But when it goes to the local newspaper, that can create a bad feeling about your organization. Like this organization is not secure enough. And for such scenarios, what we trying to do, we try to get the news, either print it on very small news at the corner of your newspaper, or otherwise we try to prevent getting it notified to the public in one way or the other. And that's how we try to mitigate our what you can say untoward incidents or not so great incidents. And these type of mitigation policy have certain cost attached to it. So all such scenario have been mentioned there, or we'll try to understand in such scenario how we'll respond, or which department will respond. Is there is a part of a negotiator, so who can be a negotiator, and who can be basically from SOC side can monitor the situation, and so on and so forth. So there are normally clear guidelines. There's an Excel sheet as in base. Then you can have additional presentations, like a presentation of physical destruction. So any physical destruction to the property, we have the mitigation mentioned in the presentation, even the cost value out. There is a challenge in terms of, let's say, logical breach in terms of, let's say, firewall breach at a given, instance, or at a given digital assets. So how do you mitigate it? There'll be a mention of it in Excel and a presentation in detail, who will lead, who will follow, and who will generate what type of incidents report, and the mitigation strategy and all those things. Even inclusion of financial spendings as well, because every mitigation strategy has some financial effects as well, right? So for such scenario, we should have approval in place. Or I can't go on, calling top bosses in the night saying, hey boss, there was a firewall hack in my such and such store. So can I spend 20K or something like that, whatever, to replace that firewall or something like that? I'm just showing an example, sharing an example with you. We'll have a look at actual breach and those practical challenges in a couple of sessions, where we try to build these mitigation strategies and, such scenario addresses, and have some funds reserved for such mitigations as well. So all these organizations, they have some reserve fund as well, so that in on 11th hour, we don't have to go run around for approvals of funds, so that we can mitigate that threats, vulnerability, whatever. So this way, there's a step-by-step approach, and that's what the cybersecurity planning, or overall SOC planning, what is referred in the industry. Cybersecurity is more of to the IT people, but overall, if you look at Walmart, rather than cybersecurity, they call it Security Operations Center, SOC. So SOC normally addresses all such threats, vulnerabilities, or challenges on day-to-day basis. And there's a nomination of at least one official who is full-time for SOC, even to the Walmarts, Circuit City, and all those things. They might share a person across the offices, but if you check with them, they'll have an SOC official nominated for such scenario, who have a specialized training in building such, that's us, the cybersecurity firm, which have a specialized training in basically, or a responsible person for physical as well as, IT security, one way or the other, who is responsible for maintaining all such threats including all just threats to his, threat register, and try to build a mitigation policies and procedure for such scenario. Does that answer your question, or sir, have I missed anything?
No, I got it. Only thing is like, when they do the vulnerabilities, they actually try to do the penetration testing. Am I correct?
Yes,
And
sir.
they will do on not on the actual server, but I think they have like, any kind of proxy where they can do that testing on the current policies. So that way, if there is any if there is any possibility of vulnerability, they can fix it and implement into the main server, or how they do it, like just.
Really great. Yeah, really great question. Let me ask you a simple question. When you purchase a new car, do
Mhm.
you think they have tested their brakes, they have tested their oil leaks and gas leaks and all those things?
So
No, no, answer me. Whenever you purchase a car, be it second hand or first hand, new or old, whatnot, have you believed whoever is giving you a car have tested the brakes, have tested the gas leaks or the oil leaks and all those things? Do you
yes.
believe? Yes. Similar way, when I purchase a software, a firewall software, let's say I purchase it from IBM or their dime a dozen company. Even if
Mhm.
I purchase the cheapest possible firewall, I can ask them, could you please give me the test results of your last risk assessment on this model of firewall? And they will be happy to share with you. And these are normally at least pre-dated, not more than a month, because they do this thing periodically. And so you can have access to those tests they have performed, whatever in terms of, I'm just giving an example of a firewall. Similar examples go with the, even the stress level test for a iron body, stress levels test for all these concrete bodies, a kind of, what you can say, seasonal test for these surveillance cameras, so that even during rain or snow, the camera won't get fogged out or won't get, unable to view kind of challenges, and so on and so forth. So this way, what we have to do, we have to make sure whatever we implement, we basically ask for the manufacturer's last threat assessment or last vulnerability test assessments sheet, and they normally have. If you look at all these firewall sites and everything, please do check. They are available publicly as well, and to all these vulnerability tools as well, so that they board these things. That's a kind of marketing fund also. They say this type of security we have been already addressed, and so on and so forth. Be it if you try to do something like even for that matters, there was a big issue on the radiation of your mobile. Have you read these issues? I think a couple of years earlier, like many of the guys who are sleeping with your mobiles or tablets getting cancer and these kind of challenges. Well, it was a big spoof now rather than anything else. But yes, then these guys have coming out with a data of how they are preventing radiations from these devices. And even they have jotted down the guidelines, like if your battery is below 20%, the chances of radiations are maximum. So please don't sleep with such devices which are batteries are less than 20%. So these kind of even customer guidelines, these what can say different vendors start giving you. Similarly, for something like cars, even if you go for something like Ferrari and all those things, they give you a clear guidelines. Like if you go beyond certain speed limit, the movement of car is such that you couldn't stop the car before, I think 15 meters is, or 25, I believe 25 meters is what the states, most of the states have implemented as a limit of brake stop. What does that mean? Your car should stop before 20 meters. And that's where all these cars, they have these, speed limits, what you normally should drive with. So if you try to get a bigger truck, the stoppage distance is a bit longer because of the sheer movement or the weight of the truck. So they say, please don't go above 40, because then the state, breakage point are tipping off. It means that the truck might not stop within 25 meters as prescribed by the state. So whenever you are moving above that speed limit, it's driver's responsibility to make sure the car stops before that accidental spot and all those things. And again, these are public safety measures implemented by the state government, implemented by the federal government in the help to help public at a large. And that's how we address even these health threats or health vulnerability also from such instrument. Even if we know whenever somebody cleans the toiletries, they normally put a tap or put a board there saying if floor is wet, please don't visit, try after a few minutes and something like that. This is all. There was a health disaster. This was a big case of a lawyer tipping off in a wet bathroom in JFK. That's a airport in New York, and he sued the state or the air authority as well as state together, saying, I have a broken. Well, he broke his femur bone. That's a bone in the hip, and he had to spend around, I don't know, like 50-60K, which he recovered from state as well as airport authority with a good interest and good this thing. The case gone on for at least 3 or 4 years. This was in late 90s or something like that. But it was really famous case where a lawyer basically challenged such authority for his fault. He slipped it because of the wet floor, and anybody can see that wet floor, right? Even these authorities have contested that. But due to non-existence of such board or non-existence of such reporting of this threat, they said it's their responsibility to pay me for that now. So that's why nowadays, whenever you go to any urinal, and if you have a board there, wet floors, please, not drive, walk carefully or something like that. It means that they are taking proper care and cautious to make sure the user won't get any damage or any health risk at all. And this is how we progress step by step. This is how we evolve step by step. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, sir.
This is really great question, believe me. And we don't get such question in the interview, but this is at a crux or philosophical level. And yes, I forgot to mention, you explained or you normally included something like SWOT analysis. SWOT is strength, weakness, and some, I forgot that one. This analysis is normally done on the basis of 4 point. Let me open a, what can say browser so that we can understand what is SWOT exactly. And will basically, where is that? Oh, come on, not right banner. Yes. Could you see my browser?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
I can.
Now, search SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threats. And if you can see here, the images mentioned here. Let me open this thing in a new browser and I'll explain that. This type of analysis we do. Could you see this thing? Could you read external origin, internal origin, helpful, harmful, threats, and all those things? These type of analysis, yes, these type of analysis we do on each of these threats and weaknesses, which are mentioned in the risk register or mentioned in our threat register, vulnerability register. Okay, so that's just an Excel sheet, or we can have a separate presentations which is linked to this Excel sheet. So in case somebody wants to understand how these risks have been planned to mitigate and all those things, we can basically have a look at that as well. If you can clearly see here, they've mentioned it with similar iconic pictures also. I really like this picture. So let me copy the link address. I'm giving you link address in a WhatsApp, so you can have a look at these as well at your leisure time. These type of things are basically help us out to learn these scenarios. Yes, these are basically. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. There was challenge in trying to join or something. Even for me, the meet took almost 2 minutes to let me enter in this thing. No problem. This type of things happens. So yes. So these type of scenario, what we're trying to understand, we are trying to understand how to build or how to secure our offices one way or the other from all such challenges we perceive on day-to-day basis. And some of these analysis to help us out because of their predetermined nature of analyzing the options available to us. Okay, so there are SWOT analysis, there are something called fishbone diagrams, And these are called analysis tools. So we analyze the threats and weaknesses to a level where we can have a solutions at place proactively rather than reactively. Okay. Yeah, I believe that's the total of answer to your question. Really great question. Thanks a lot. Does anybody have any questions on these? I'll take it as a no problem. In our next session, pardon me, I've already crossed the limit. We'll try to understand what is security operations centers, and we'll try to understand how do we build actually these security operations centers, what type of templates could we use, and how do we, what all departments normally included in this SOC, and even the SOC structure as well. Okay. So let's meet day after tomorrow, and we'll try to understand or actually start building this SOC center practicability, and then we'll move on to the tools and techniques of these, vulnerability testing, threat testing, the risk testing, and all those things. Okay, sure. Anybody have any question for me?
No, I don't.
No, I'm good.
Okay, great.
Good,
Thanks a lot for your time. Have a good night.
Good.
Thank
You
you.
too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's meet day after tomorrow.
Okay.
Thanks you.